Packers week is here. Our Chicago Bears face off against the hated Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field on Sunday Night Football. Who's going to win this game? Watch this video to find out. Before we get into the video, I want to talk about the sponsor of this video, DraftKings Sportsbook. It's week 2 of the NFL, and we saw a lot of upsets last weekend. So a lot of crazy stuff is happening around the NFL, and if you guys want to bet on this NFL action, DraftKings Sportsbook has a really nice promotion for new users that I would highly recommend you guys go for if you don't have an account already. So I have a link down below to download the app, and when you sign up, use promo code DaWindyCity, and if you do that, when you place a $5 bet on any team or any action week 1 on the NFL, you actually get $200 in free bets. Regardless of what happens with that bet, you get $200 to use on other bets, which I think is a really nice promotion. Okay, it's a nice start to your bankroll if you're new to betting right now. And guys, DraftKings has same game parlays too, which I really love because you can turn a small wager into potentially a large winning if all the things you predict to happen actually happen in that game. So for example, combine passing yards for one player with rushing yards for another player, with receiving yards for this player, with a touchdown for that player. If all those things happen, you get the payout that it says you're supposed to get. And the odds, they can go up there, okay, if you combine a lot of things. So it's another really cool thing to try out if you have not tried it out already. And guys, if you are not located in a state where sports betting is legal right now, they also have DraftKings Daily Fantasy, which is a little bit different, but you can still win money on football this season using that app as well. So definitely a really good app, guys, if you want to get into sports betting. It's an official betting partner, by the way, of the NFL, so you guys know your money is going to be secure. You can withdraw it pretty easily. I've been using it for a number of years. It's been a great app for me. I would not be promoting this app if I did not actually like it myself, and that's why you guys should download the app right now, okay? So use promo code DaWindyCity while signing up to turn $5 of bets into $200 of free bets on any NFL action week 2. What's up, guys? I'm back with the Chicago Bears pregame prediction videos, which I'll be doing for every single Bears game this year. So if you guys want more predictions from me and more post-game content, definitely be sure to subscribe to my channel. But in today's video, I'll be breaking down the matchup between our Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers, okay? The team that, unfortunately, for the majority of my life, has been destroying us, okay? Basically every single game, especially on Sunday Night Football, okay? We have lost 11 out of our last 12 matchups against our rivals. It's not really been a rivalry recently because the Packers always destroy us, and it sucks to see because we can never talk smack back. We can never talk trash back to Packers fans because they always beat us, okay? But maybe change is coming, okay? Because fun fact, guys, the last time we hired a coach similar to Matt Eberflus, Lovie Smith, okay, ran a lot of the same principles that Matt Eberflus runs. He had the same type of defense. He kind of had the same hits principle too. It was probably called something else, but preach a lot of the same things that Eberflus preaches right now. And after Lovie Smith came to Chicago, Brett Favre went 2-6 against the Bears for the rest of his Packers career. Before that, he was 20-4, okay? Completely owned us like Aaron Rodgers does right now. So I'm not trying to say that we're going to do the same thing to Rodgers because a lot is different right now. The roster probably was better back then when Lovie Smith took over. And, obviously Aaron Rodgers is, in my opinion, a better quarterback overall than Brett Favre was. And right now the Bears are in kind of a rebuilding mode. But like we saw last weekend, guys, anything is possible with how bought in this team is on the new coaching staff. I know it's only 1 week. You don't want to overreact to 1 week, but we beat a contending team at home at Soldier Field, okay? A team in which nobody thought the Bears had any chance against. So if we win a game like that, why can we not at least be competitive in a game against the Packers and maybe steal it at the end, okay? I'm not going to spoil my prediction in this video. That'll be at the end of the video, but I think the Bears might be more competitive than the 10.5-point spread that the odds makers are giving the Packers right now. But talking about the Packers a little bit, guys, are coming off a pretty disappointing loss against the Minnesota Vikings, in which they lost 23-7, got beat on both sides of the football. They had rookies making big mistakes, like Christian Watson dropped a wide open, would have been like a 70-yard touchdown, I think. Their defense got destroyed by Justin Jefferson and company. So not a good showing for the Packers week 1. But even last year, guys, the Packers had a bad showing week 1 against the Saints. They got blown out, but they ended up winning the division still. So don't write off the Packers at all just yet. They're still a really good football team. I still think they're going to be competing for the division, probably, maybe even winning it at the end. But they might be more weaker this year than they have been in years prior because they lost guys like Devontae Adams. And also, they have big injuries on the offensive line too. But way too early to be writing off the Packers right now. They still have Aaron Rodgers, a back-to-back MVP that has destroyed us during his Packers career. And coming off a loss like the one he had against the Vikings, he is going to be angry going into Lambeau Field on Sunday Night Football. And he's going to be wanting to prove something to the rest of the NFL, I guess, that the Packers are still, a contending team. So we're going to have to be at our absolute best if we want to have a chance to upset this team and pull off, a surprising win for the second week in a row. But talking about the Green Bay Packers offense now, okay, giving you guys some more information about what they run, who their best players are. Well, obviously they run an offense very similar to the one we have in Chicago because Luke Getsy comes from the Green Bay Packers coaching tree, okay, the Matt LaFleur coaching tree. He was a quarterbacks coach and an assistant there under LaFleur. So schematically, this Packers offense is very similar to what the Chicago Bears run, which might be a benefit for the Bears defense because they practice against this offense now every day in practice, but it's also a benefit for the Packers defense as well because they practice against this offense every day for even longer. So we'll see how that affects the defenses. But talking about their, offensive line, guys, Packers have major question marks right now on the offensive line, which I feel like I've never been able to say because the Packers are almost always solid on the offensive line. But last week against the Vikings, they were far from solid, partly because Elton Jenkins, right tackle, and David Bakhtiari, left tackle, are injured, okay? They didn't play last weekend against the Vikings, and according to Ian Rappaport, they most likely are not going to play on Sunday night against the Chicago Bears as well, which again is a big, big blow to the Packers offensive line. Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari are two of the best tackles in all of football, and they have respectable guys behind them. Like Josh Nijman has had pretty good games against the Bears whenever he's had to fill in. They got Royce Newman as well at tackle, but that's still a big drop off from Elton Jenkins and Dave Bakhtiari. And John Runyon also did not practice as the time recording this video either, so he might not be playing in this game as well, which that might be 3 starters the Packers offensive line could be down. And again, I do want to reiterate that it seems like this doesn't ever matter against the Chicago Bears. Like the Packers have always had some type of injuries on the offensive line against the Bears, but they still always beat us because they have respectable backups. But last week against the Vikings, guys, the Vikings definitely took advantage of that weaker Packers offensive line. They hit Aaron Rodgers a bunch of times. They sacked him 4 times. So we'll see, what the offensive line is going to be like against the Chicago Bears. Okay, it might be weaker than in years prior. The receiving core right now also has major question marks, which I feel like I've never been able to say about the Packers again because they've had Davante Adams, one of the best receivers in all of football, a guy whose game I thoroughly respected and a guy that I actually liked, obviously not as a Packer, but as a player. And I was so damn happy when the Packers traded him away to the Raiders because I knew how important he was to that Packers offense the last 3+ years. Okay, last year, Davante Adams had 169 targets in that offense. Okay, that is a vast majority of targets going to one guy who is no longer there. Okay, he was Aaron Rodgers' right-hand man. He destroyed us so many times as a Packer. So those snaps have not been replaced adequately just yet. Okay, last game against the Vikings, there was a lot of frustration going on from Aaron Rodgers, communicating with his younger receivers because they're just not at the same level that Davante Adams was. They have Christian Watson, who they drafted in the 2nd round this year, which he's a guy with a lot of long-term potential. Very big frame, very athletic. He can run right by you like he did against the Vikings defense, but he kind of has a drop problem, guys, okay? And he's very raw as well. Last game against the Vikings, like I mentioned, he dropped a wide open touchdown. He can separate, but can he catch consistently? I don't know. Okay, and Aaron Rodgers didn't really throw to him much after he dropped that pass. Romeo Doubs is a rookie that has flashed a lot in the preseason and also in training camp too, so he might be a more, reliable target for Aaron Rodgers right now, but again, he is still super young too. They have older vets on this roster like Sammy Watkins, like Randall Cobb. They also obviously have Alan Lazard, who is their number 1 option according to Aaron Rodgers, and if he comes back, he didn't play last weekend due to an injury, but if he comes back against the Bears on Sunday night, that is at least going to be a piece that Aaron Rodgers has some type of chemistry with, so that's going to be a big boost to the Packers offense. But as a whole, this Packers receiving core is very, very unproven, okay? It's very similar in talent to the Chicago Bears current receiving core, which is ranked among the bottom in the NFL. But Aaron Rodgers has been throwing a lot to his tight end and to his running backs as well. Okay, last game against the Vikings, A.J. Dillon actually was the leading receiver in that game. He had 5 receptions for 46 yards. So clearly he trusts his running backs enough to make plays for him in the receiving game, and with good reason too, because both A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are good receiving backs. So both A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are probably the strength of this Packers offense. They have very good running backs. They also have a decent tight end, Robert Tonyan, who had that one season where he completely went off for, what was it, 9 touchdowns or something? I forgot the exact number, but he's clearly capable of producing in the red zone for this Packers offense as well. And obviously, they have number 12, okay? They have Aaron Rodgers. So even with how unproven this entire Packers offense is, they could go off at any time because they have a back-to-back MVP at quarterback who's destroyed us during his entire career, okay? So don't count out Aaron Rodgers at all just yet. But definitely a weaker, supporting cast than we have seen in years prior. So that is the Packers offense. Talking about the Packers defense now, it is also very talented on paper, but they had a rough game last weekend against the Minnesota Vikings. They allowed almost 400 yards of offense against the Vikings and 200 yards to Justin Jefferson. Now, lucky for them, we don't have a Justin Jefferson, unfortunately. Like, I love Darnell Mooney, but he is not J-Jeff. Like, Justin Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the NFL. So we'll see if they can do better against this, weaker and talented Bears offense. But it wasn't a good showing regardless, okay? They just completely forgot to cover, Jefferson because he was left wide open multiple times during that game, which makes you question, what was their game plan going into that game? But on paper, again, guys, like I said, this is one of the most talented defenses in the league. They have a very strong front seven. They have guys like Rashawn Gary, young player on the upswing of his career who had a very nice, breakout, I would say, 2021. Preston Smith is also a very talented edge rusher, very explosive. They have Kenny Clark, obviously, in the middle, plugging up those running lanes and getting pressure on the quarterback, pushing the pocket. And they drafted Quay Walker in the draft this year, guys, okay, with their first pick. They actually went defense back-to-back with both the first-round picks they had, okay? Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt. Wyatt has not really played that much as a starter, so he's kind of in a reserve role right now, kind of developing. But Quay Walker is starting. He is contributing, coming out of Georgia, was one of the top linebackers in this year's class. And they obviously retained Devondre Campbell as well, who had a very strong 2021, a Pro Bowl and All-Pro season, I believe, as well. So the front seven is looking really solid on paper. Again, struggled last game against the Vikings, but we'll see if that carries over into the next game. Their secondary also might be a force, okay? They have big names like Jair Alexander. They drafted Eric Stokes. They have Rasul Douglas, who had a pick 6 on Justin Fields last game. Darnell Savage and our former friend Adrian Amos at safety, okay? Both playmaking, very athletic safeties. So on paper, again, guys, very talented defense all around. I don't like to give compliments to Packers players especially, but they have a lot of ballers on this defense, and they're going to have a plan for Justin Fields, okay? So our offense is going to have to play their best game against a defense this talented. But talking about the Bears offense now, they're coming off a game in which they looked absolutely horrible in the first half, but looked a lot better in the second half against a pretty strong 49ers defense, okay? They scored 3 touchdowns in the second half, gained a whole bunch of yards on chunk plays, and looked a lot better blocking too. But again, that first half was absolutely horrendous. So if the Bears want to have a chance to upset the Green Bay Packers, they cannot repeat the same offensive performance they had in that first half, because we got away with it against Trey Lance, but we're not going to get away with it against Aaron Rodgers most likely. And last game, guys, Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet were not really big factors in the receiving game, which, obviously Darnell Mooney got his first taste of being the number one receiver and getting the attention that a number one receiver does get. So I think, long-term he will be fine. He's still a very talented guy that can separate pretty well, very explosive athlete who has worked a lot on his game in the offseason. But against the Packers, you're going to need to have more than one reception for 8 yards, okay? And that's also on Luke Getsy for drawing up plays that free up Darnell Mooney. Last game he was kind of the guy drawing all the attention so other guys could eat, but we want Darnell Mooney to eat as well because he is the most talented receiver that we have. Cole Kmet also was a non-factor in the receiving game, partly because he was used a lot as a blocker in that game, which I totally understand why Luke Getsy did that, because we needed help going up against a very strong 49ers defensive front. But he's also going to have to be a big part of the receiving game in the future as well, because he is one of the 2 most talented receivers that we have on this team, okay? Behind Darnell Mooney, I know Cole Kmet is a tight end, but he's probably the second biggest piece that we have on this offense. And in the future, if we want to have a sustainable offense, not just, one half of like really good football and one half of bad football, you need Mooney and Kmet to be showing up consistently in the receiving game. Talking about the Bears offensive line, it's obviously very unproven, very young, but especially in that second half, they had a better than expected game last weekend, okay? Especially Tevin Jenkins playing at right guard. He was switching off with Lucas Patrick like every other drive because Lucas Patrick couldn't play center, so they wanted to get some snaps for Lucas Patrick as well. But Tevin Jenkins, I thought, looked like the best offensive lineman we had on the football field, okay? Mauling people, and also helped out on a couple Bosa blocks as well, okay? He actually knocked Bosa down to the ground on one of the blocks that I saw on Twitter. So there's more talent in this Bears offensive line than people think, but they are still super young, so they are going to still make mistakes during the course of the season. So be patient with them. And going up against a strong Packers defensive front, they still could make some mistakes like they did last weekend in that first half. I also want to talk about, kind of like a storyline, a fun storyline in this game with the Bears offense, because we actually have 3 guys on the Bears offense right now. Okay, the play caller, Luke Getsy, Equanimeous St. Brown, the receiver, and Lucas Patrick, the center, who are going to be returning to Green Bay for the first time in the Chicago Bears uniform. And you can bet, guys, they're going to want to put on a show against their former team, okay? Especially maybe Equanimeous St. Brown, because this guy's been hated on a lot by Packers fans, okay? When he signed with the Chicago Bears, Packers fans were basically laughing at that signing and saying he was completely useless, he's not going to do anything for the Bears. Well, he already scored a touchdown last weekend, which is more than the entire Packers receiving corps combined last weekend. And I really think that Luke Getsy is going to be drawing up plays for Equanimeous St. Brown to do something against his former team. And that would be such a fun storyline if he scored a touchdown in Lambeau as a member of the Chicago Bears. That'd be a nice confidence boost for Equanimeous St. Brown going forward this season. And obviously, lastly, I want to talk about Justin Fields, our QB1, who last week in the first half did struggle. He had a poor first half, but looked a lot better in that second half. And obviously, Justin Fields is a young and developing quarterback, okay? He's not going to be like an MVP right away because he's only started at this point 11 games so far in the NFL. So you guys got to remember, he's still young, he's still growing, but he has all the talent in the world, and hopefully that talent gets shown in this game, okay? I'm sure Luke Getsy will be drawing up a lot of plays in which you're going to see Justin Fields' arm talent, you're going to see his speed and his athleticism as well. So hopefully, our offense can have a better and more consistent game this week than we did last week. Then lastly, talking about the Bears defense, they had a very encouraging performance last weekend against the 49ers. Okay, only allowed 10 points the entire game against a pretty strong 49ers supporting cast. Obviously, Trey Lance is basically a rookie, so he was kind of a question mark at quarterback, but they had Brandon Ayuk out there, they had Deebo Samuel out there, they had Trent Williams out there, and still only scored 10 points against a pretty young Bears defense. I mean, we had rookies playing almost 20% of the entire snaps that the defense had. Okay, Jaquan Brisker, Dominique Robinson, Kyler Gordon as well. So a lot of young guys on the defense, but still played pretty good last game. The hits principle really is changing how the Bears defense plays football, because they're definitely going for the football and trying to get turnovers more than they were the last couple of years. Okay, last game against the Niners, we had 2 turnovers forced. We had Eddie Jackson jumping around, and we also had Jalen Johnson getting a peanut punch in there. So expect this Bears defense to be fast, physical, hard-hitting, and also motivated against a Packers offense that has destroyed them in years prior. Okay, I know that the guys in the Bears defense now have not been here for the past couple plus years. There's a lot of new guys in the Bears defense, but still, I guarantee you guys, Matt Eberflus will be playing that I Own You video to the entire Bears defense before this game to rile them up and have them, show some pride in this game, which we have not shown pride in years prior. So the hits principle definitely is something that's been helping the Bears defense up to this point. I also want to talk about our schematics a little bit. So this defense does not blitz that much. Okay, last game against Trey Lance, we did not blitz a single time, and under Matt Eberflus, the Colts rarely blitzed either. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be the same game plan against a quarterback as talented as Aaron Rodgers. But I do want to bring up that the last time we played a respectable game against Aaron Rodgers, okay, back in 2018, the last time we actually held them to not scoring many points at all, we had Vic Fangio, who also did not blitz that much. So maybe this game plan could still work against a quarterback like Rodgers, but you have to get pressure on him with your front four. Otherwise, that plan is not going to work, because he's going to pick you apart in zone or in man or whatever defense you have out there. If you don't send pressure at Rodgers, at some point, he is going to pick you apart. So that is the Bears defense. Pretty talented, I would say. More talented than people gave them credit for going into the season. And, they might be the reason why the Bears could be in this game, okay? Because I still think our offense is still way too unproven to win in a shootout against a quarterback like Rodgers. Now, going to my 3 keys to a Bears victory, okay? How can the Chicago Bears actually win this game? And key number 1, guys, is going to be to have a functional, quick passing game against this Packers defense. Last game against the Niners, we did not have a functional, quick passing game, okay? All the plays that we did get going were on plays in which Justin Fields had to extend the play, or it was play action, or like a bootleg or something. We didn't have much of a pocket, quick passing game in which Fields was getting a slant out for a couple yards, or an out route, or a screen pass. We tried a lot of screen passes, but they didn't end up working in that game, partly because it was so wet outside, so it's kind of hard to hang on to the football or even throw the football. But in this game against the Packers defense, you need to have a quick passing game, okay? You need to get the ball out of Justin Fields' hands pretty fast, because they're going to send pressure at Justin Fields like they did last year against the Chicago Bears. And obviously getting Velus Jones back would help a lot because he is a guy that can get a lot of yards after the catch. So dump the ball off to Velus, have him do some work after the catch. Same with Byron Pringle. We actually didn't target Byron Pringle that much in the last game, so I'm hoping to see him be a bigger factor in this game against the Packers. But regardless, you're going to have a better quick passing game than you had last weekend against the 49ers, because that performance against the Niners is not sustainable long term, okay? And you're not going to beat a team like the Packers having that first half performance. So that is key number one. Key number two is going to be to stunt on him if you are the Chicago Bears defense. Okay, this Packers offensive line is completely banged up. So Allen Williams has to create some stunts, has to create some confusion at the line of scrimmage to confuse this Packers offensive line that is not as talented, as experienced as it has been in years prior. They still have good backups, guys. Like, I think their backups are still decent, but they are not David Bakhtiari. They're not Elton Jenkins. If John Running does not play, that's another key loss on the offensive line. So if you're not going to blitz Aaron Rodgers that much, like Matt Eberflus does not blitz that much, you're going to have to send stunts and other creative ways to get pressure and to create confusion at the line of scrimmage in protecting Aaron Rodgers for the Packers offensive line. And as we have seen in the past, guys, when we get pressure on Rodgers, good stuff happens. But the problem is we rarely get pressure on Aaron Rodgers. That's why he beats us basically every single time. So that's going to be imperative in this game. It's to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers by stunting on the Packers offensive line. And then finally, key number three is going to be to finish with physicality on both offense and on defense. Okay, previous games against the Packers, we are always the less physical team. Okay, we're always getting pushed around by the Packers offensive line. Our own offensive line is always getting pushed around by the Packers defensive line. And even not looking at the lines, okay, looking at the receivers, looking at the tight ends, they're always more physical on the Packers side of the football, okay? And that cannot continue if you are the Chicago Bears under head coach Matt Eberflus. We finally have a coach that does preach how important playing tough physical football is. And if you want to have a chance against a team this good to upset them, you're going to have to be as physical as you were last game against the Niners, and even more at Lambeau Field. And then lastly, guys, it's time for my score prediction. Who do I have win this game? And I tried to be as unbiased in my predictions as I possibly can be. So I went back and forth on this prediction multiple times. Okay, I changed it multiple times because I do think it is going to be closer than people think it is going to be. I mean, the odds makers have this as a 10.5 point spread in Green Bay's favor, which I just, looking at the Packers roster right now, I do get that Aaron Rodgers has completely owned us during his career, but I just don't see how the Packers offense, besides Rodgers, is that much more talented at this stage than the Bears offense, and the Bears defense also has been playing a lot better. So taking all that into account, I gotta pick our Chicago Bears to win, man. 24-21, get the upset at Lambeau Field. I could be totally wrong on this, but I just cannot find it in my heart right now to pick the Packers to win. And right now, with Elton Jenkins being out, with David Bakhtiari being out, this might be the weakest the Packers have been in a while. Okay, we actually have a chance in this game, maybe because of those injuries. Okay, if those guys were healthy, I do think the Packers probably would have beaten us, because having your left and right tackle healthy is a big thing in the NFL. Okay, protection is key, especially for an older quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. He trusts his guys in front of him to protect for him, and when they're not protecting like they weren't last weekend against the Vikings, bad stuff happens. Okay, the Packers only scored 7 points against a pretty mediocre at best, in my opinion, Vikings defense. So if the Vikings did that last weekend, blew them out, why can we not edge the Packers out at Lambeau Field? Okay, I know I'm being optimistic with this take. Like, Packers fans will call me super biased in the comments, which go ahead, okay, but I'm gonna remain hopeful until I don't have reason to. Okay, so if we get destroyed in this game, then yeah, I'll go back to being a realistic Bears fan. But right now, I'm gonna have optimism if the regime has shown me reason to have optimism, which they definitely have up to this point. So that is my prediction for this game. As for my offensive MVP of this game, I'm gonna pick Byron Pringle. Okay, how about 50 yards and a touchdown? Last game I think he only had one reception for like 20 yards, but that was a big chunk play that helped us move the football down the field and make that comeback. And his speed, his athleticism is going to be helpful against this Packers talented defense. So Byron Pringle for offensive MVP. For defensive MVP, Trevis Gibson. Okay, this guy had a very underrated game last weekend against the Niners. He had 5 pressures in that game. Didn't get a sack, but he helped other guys get sacks. And that could continue in this game against the Packers, against a probably weaker offensive line than we have seen in years prior. But that is the end of my video, guys. It's getting pretty long now, so shut it down right here. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think about this game. If you guys think the Bears have a chance to upset, what do you think the final score of the game is going to be. And honest to God, guys, if we somehow win this, I know I did predict the Bears to win, but I still realize it is going to be an uphill battle. But if we are able to beat Aaron Rodgers with a rebuilding Bears team, okay, this Bears team is still not nearly as good as it's going to be in years in the future. That would be such a encouraging sign for the Bears' future going forward. And it's obviously always good to beat the Packers because we rarely do so. So, God, I hope the Bears win. Leave your comments down below, guys. I'll be back with my post-game reaction on Sunday night. As always, bear down.